So my name is Max Reisinger. I'm 18, turning 19 at the end of the month. And I'm primarily known for filming YouTube videos. I started filming my life when I moved to France, I think 3 years ago now. And I filmed a lot of videos going to school, and those kind of went viral. And ever since, I've just continued documenting my life online. There's my dog. Hello. Um, and yeah, I also founded a clothing brand, Perspectopia, and that's where I'm at.
Great. Perfect. So you moved to France during high school, if I'm correct,
Yes.
for several months. Why did you move?
It was for my mom's job. She's a professor, and she was going on sabbatical, and she was like, hey, why not go to the south of France? And we're all like, okay. So we all just moved to the south of France for 7 months.
Oh, grand. And looking back on the experience based on what you know now and having come back and been in the US for a little while, what do you think is your perspective on that move and the influence it had on you as a person?
I loved it. I think it was like a significant moment in my life where I really had the opportunity to not like define who I want to be, because that sounds kind of cliche, but in a way, like really use that opportunity to grow into who I am today, I suppose. And I think it was just great because I got to step outside of just like everything at home, like my social life, the American school system, and I kind of just had like these 7 months to just like not like play around, but like figure out what was important to me. I think I'm just tremendously grateful for that opportunity.
Okay, that's interesting to hear. And you blew up on YouTube not long afterwards, if I remember correctly. So
Yeah.
what was the experience of blowing up on YouTube like for you?
Oh, it was great. I mean, I don't think there's any better feeling. It was, I don't know, like when you work at something like YouTube for, I think at that point maybe it was 8 or 9 months of making 50, 60 videos. And at a certain point, I just became like relentlessly optimistic that like this will work out, this will work out, like I will go viral. And for so long, I was making like 20 cents a day, getting like 5 subscribers. I was just like, it's gonna happen, gonna happen. So like I was so delusionally optimistic that when it did happen, it was just like such a high in like so many levels, because like for the first time you get paid for making your videos, everyone around you is like, oh my god, he actually did it. And then just like all the opportunities start coming in, you're getting emails. It's just like nothing better than that.
It's great. You mentioned optimism, and I've noticed on your
Yeah.
channel you talk a lot about optimism, and
Yeah.
you strike me as someone who likes to ask questions. I've seen in so many of your videos you asking questions about different things like racism and stuff. And so in light of that, I was wondering, do you think optimism is the way forward for the world in light of what's going on now?
I think it has to be. I think there's no other way we can like move forward. I think like humans are inherently optimistic in some degree, even if we don't fully recognize it or feel like it. But yeah, like in my eyes, I just don't see any other way of making change with like anything in the world. I think we all have to be slightly optimistic to even consider any sort of change. But I think it's the optimistic people who will make that change, when we look back.
Okay. I've noticed as well, you've mentioned the word business twice and the fact that you have your own business, which you started at around 16. I love being a journalist because the great thing about it is I get to dig all this information up about people. But you started around 16, which is 2 years ago, and it's named Perspectopia, if I'm correct. Can you tell me a
Yes.
little bit about the concept behind that and I guess I had the word for it, which I've forgotten what that was. Where did I write this? That's the word, concept, the concept behind it.
Yes, for sure, for sure. So, even going into like starting my YouTube channel, I'd always been interested in fashion and, wearing it because it just made me feel good. Like I would have these favorite hoodies and I'd wear them to school in France. And I just like felt good about myself. So I love the relationship between clothing and then like the emotion tied to it. And fortunately, I got, kind of lucky with the timing of like my YouTube channel blowing up. I think it was the end of that year. So I was like, wow, like now I actually have a community of people who resonate with this optimistic kind of like ideology, I suppose, to a certain degree. I was like, how can I like bring these people together and form more of like a community? Because like one of the things that frustrates me about YouTube is there's a lot of people watching, my videos, but they're not like connected in any capacity. And the comment section is just not like interactive enough to where you can actually like have genuine conversation. And so Perspectopia is like a concept kind of came together in a lot of different things, but like business aside, like first off, there's kind of like not like a religion, but like something like in my mind where I'm like, this is how I want to like live my life. And Perspectopia was like this like place that I could go to in my mind. And I think like if I like try to like psychoanalyze myself, going back home, back into America, it's like, all right, I'm back in this system that I don't really like. And like a lot of kids here are like stressed out because it's junior year. And it's like not supposed to be an enjoyable time of your life. Junior year in the United States is seen as like the hell year. So I was like, I don't want to like fall into that. I don't like agree with that. So in my mind, Perspectopia, which combines the word perspective and utopia, is a place where like no matter where you are in your life, no matter who you're around, like what you're feeling, you can kind of like go there in your mind and like find some sort of like peace and optimism in the moment. And so that was like the concept for Perspectopia, which turned into like an online community and Discord server where people could interact and get to know each other. But then on the other half of that, it was finally something that I wanted to create that people could represent and wear and like feel and kind of promote that sort of way of life. Yes, I think that's the answer.
I guess it's more than a fashion brand, it's a way of life.
Exactly. An optimistic way of living is like the slogan. Which I guess is
Fast forwarding now out of your mind and into the present. You're on your gap year. And you've been traveling around the world a lot. And I've also heard you mention quite a lot about the education system. So I'm curious as to, in the entire year so far that you've been on your gap year, comparing that to your time in school, do you think that the education in school has helped you in any way in terms of facing the world, so to speak? Or like, has the gap year been more enriching? Like, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, like I think it definitely has made me appreciative of like the foundations that it's gave me. Like, I have like a general understanding of how most things work in the world. But at the same time, I think the largest thing that it's taught me is what it actually hasn't taught me, which is, I'm going to like a country like Turkey. I'm like, oh yeah, our president. I'm like, who? Like, I have no idea who your president is. I don't understand any of like the politics and how it like, connects to Europe. Like, I just felt very like out of touch, and like on a lot of my travels, I just don't know a lot about the world. And like I don't think it's like my fault, but I definitely don't feel like my high school education prepared me for the world in like any real ways, I suppose. My psychology classes were great. I think it was all like a good first step into like sparking curiosity where you can take that and go further. So in that regard, like I'm happy with my education. But I think the biggest thing is like there's just so much more that I don't know. And I think that's why I'm like excited to go to university. I don't know if that fully answered your question. I forget.
No, it did. I was going to ask in light of that, because it seems you're not the only person I've spoken to about the education system, and it seems there is a massive void. And so I was going to ask, what do you think is the future of the education system? And as someone who's just left, looking back, what would you change if you could, to make it more relatable, more applicable to the world we live in now?
Yeah. Great question. I had the opportunity. I was invited to this event called WISE, which is the World Innovation Summit for Education in Doha, Qatar. So I was there back in December. And this is where like all the world leaders came together. Like there are people from the UN. Like one time I was at dinner and this lady's like, oh yeah, like we just raised $100 million from like Bill Gates for our startup in education in Africa, and we're like building the curriculum. I'm like, whoa, like that's insane. The dude across from me like won this award from Elon Musk. Like it was like the people in charge of education, like in the future of it. So I got the opportunity to like really see like what their minds were thinking, and for the most part, they were not optimistic in any like regard at all. they're like, we go to the UN meetings and nothing really changes. It's just old people kind of saying the same old, same old. But what fascinated me was they were like, you don't understand the power you have, the influence you have. It's like up to the youth to like change education. Like, you guys have the power of social media. You can come together to do that. And so, going there and having all these conversations, listening on talks of like all these great leaders. I mean, there's so many ways education can be changed, and it's such a complex topic. I don't want to call it like an issue, but just like sector in general. I think education should it should be fun. I think the basic like idea that people don't look forward to going to school and that like stresses them out is just like wrong. So I think what should change is people should look forward to going to school. It should be enjoyable to learn. It should be interactive. It should be up to date. And the fact that it's not is just like not great. So I think that's my final answer.
Speaking of up to date, I noticed the people you mentioned, they're not, I'm going to say, Gen Zers. So then, and that's what you think they should be in charge. No disrespect to any of them, but you mentioned that the power is in the youth. So then, from a youth perspective, do you think it should be the youth who are in charge of the way the world is spinning and making these decisions and sitting in big rooms like that?
Yeah, I definitely think that the youth should be a lot more involved. I think like we still have to like respect our elders, and like, where they come from. But yeah, like I think the world is moving at such a rapid pace where like what we know today very different, or like even how we live our lives today is very different from 5 years ago and 10 years ago. And like since society is just moving at such a rapid pace, like I think it's only right to have people who are living in that current, movement part of the conversation. And I think they're starting to do that. And getting better at it. I don't know if they're actually listening, but I think we're getting closer, hopefully. I'm optimistic.
Okay. Obviously, since COVID has happened, sorry, I wasn't going to ask this. I had no intention of going here, but you mentioned it, so I had a thought. Since COVID has happened, we had TikTok and it's grown. And so I guess the face of social media and the YouTube world has changed. And now we have influencers and houses and all this wonderful jazz. What do you think the future is of YouTube? Because some people would say that now it's oversaturated. And I think there are many teenagers who are, regress is not the right word, but they're moving away from social media because of the influence it's having, ironically. So in light of all these different changes and all the different styles of video that are now completely crashing the market, what do you think the future of YouTube is?
That is a great question. Future of YouTube, I think the YouTube in general, I think has the most promise as a platform. I think there's something like 2 billion like global users or something incredible like that. But I mean, it's very hard to say like what exactly it's going to look like. And I don't think it's even close to oversaturated. I think we're like literally still like in the beginning stages. When we were trying to organize the Wholesome House like a couple months ago, we were looking around like who are other kids our age who are filming their life, who are like 18, 19, 20 in the United States, who like have maybe like a little bit of a following, or like someone we would know. We're like, there really aren't many of us at all doing this, or like no one we could find. We'd ask around. I would post on like my community pages like, who are other people my age that you watch? And so if anything, like I think it's undersaturated. There's just like not enough people maybe sharing their lives or creating content, and maybe people are, and it's not maybe always being seen. But I still think YouTube has so much potential, in just so many different regards. But I think what I'm most excited for is just like more storytelling on YouTube, more like films, like maybe YouTube competing more with Netflix, more documentaries, just like quality pieces of content. And I think we have this like rise of short form content, this just like super in your face, fast paced attention span like content that like I don't really like. So I'm hoping that we're starting to move away from that. And I don't know, I think it depends on like this next sort of generation to build what we want the future of social media to be. And I don't think like it's inherently bad. I think it's just like, again, like I think it is up to us to like, choose what we create, and then also like who we support, and like who we watch as well.
The question then would be, what advice would you have for someone who's looking to start their own YouTube channel?
Just like do it. There's no advice. I think for the longest time, like I would make excuses like I can't start a YouTube channel because of this, or my life isn't interesting enough. I highly recommend watching my friend Ryan's channel, Ryan NG Films. He makes a great video about it, or made a great video called My Life, or Why Your Life Isn't Interesting Enough, or something like that. And he just films videos in his room, and they're incredible, like so incredible. So I think we all like to like limit ourselves because we have a bit of fear. So I would just say, you know, like take a hard look at like yourself, like look within, maybe journal it out, write out all your biggest fears. And, you know, I could have made so many reasons not to film when I first started, you know, and I'm just so glad that I like chose to look past them, because my life just is like infinitely better today. And not even like, you know, money aside, or like subscribers aside, numbers aside, like I have a catalog where I can like watch myself growing up. You know, like I film these videos that like I have forever. Like my kids will be able to watch this, my grandchildren will be able to watch this. And also it's just been like a nice introspective journey. You know, like I can go on a trip and like look back at like what I learned and try to film a storyline. And not saying like you have to do that with your YouTube videos, but like just as like an art form, in a way, like living and documenting your life. I think that in itself is just like beautiful. So like take the pressure off yourself. Like you don't even have to post your videos, you know, to the world. You can leave them unlisted if you want, or you don't have to tell anyone. But I think if you are interested and curious, the biggest thing is just getting your foot in the door. I like to always go back to this quote that like has resonated with me, but like the hardest part about any task is the first 1% and the last 10%. And so for most people, they just get stuck at the 1%. And then once you do it, you're like, oh, it's not even that bad. So that's my long-winded answer of just like Nike, you know, just do it. But yeah, I think you won't regret it.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else you would like to say before I stop the recorder and thank you properly?
Have you ever thought about starting a YouTube channel? Or you did, right? That was the very you did, of course. I literally watched your videos. But like what made you decide to start it? What was that like, moment of tension where you're like, oh, like I'm just gonna do it?